What's up, YouTube? It's your girl DeeDee, and welcome back to the channel. Thank y'all so much for tuning in once again. So I am back with another reaction video. Now, as you guys already know, those of you who follow me, you know my channel is not a politics channel. It's not about politics, but I am forced to react to what's happening because it's just very interesting. And I think that even though my channel is not a political channel, I am still an American, and I still have to vote. So I have to be aware of what's out there. And so far, as I've been watching the debates and everything that's going on between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, I've just been enamored with the information that I'm seeing and what's coming out. I'm just compelled to respond to it or react to it because I think it's very important for people to be informed about their voting decisions and about the politicians who are running. And I think it's important for us not to be ignorant on who we're potentially voting for, their record and everything that they stand for, because you have to make an informed vote, right? You have to make informed decisions as to who you want to vote for off of their politics, off of their background, their history, and all of that. So it's just important for me to pay attention and give my thoughts on this, because it's so important in my opinion, and especially in the times that we're in now with everything that's happening. You have to be informed and not just vote on what looks good or what sounds good, or even if a person looks like you. And I think it's important for us to start to realize what's really important and not just vote based on that. I'm going to react to this interview she did on Fox News, which I thought was very compelling and very telling. And look, no matter which way you decide to vote, it's best to just have the information out there on the candidates and make an informed decision. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get into it, you guys. I'll put the link to the full interview if you want to check it out. If you haven't seen it yet, I'll put it down below to Fox News. But we're gonna get into it, and I'm gonna react to this one. Definitely chime in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts on this one, you guys. So let's go ahead and get into it. Here we go.
Madam Vice President, thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Brett.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration, because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you,
now,
just a number, do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point, okay? The point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
it's a rough estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't she in charge of the border? The thing that I've seen so far, and what's common with a lot of Kamala Harris's interviews, is the fact that she doesn't really answer the questions. She has a certain set of responses that she uses no matter what the question is, in my opinion. It's not a direct response, it's just the same talking points over and over and over and over again, to the point where people just know what she's gonna say. They know she's gonna say she grew up in the middle class. They know she's gonna say the same old talking points no matter what you ask, and then pivot to what Donald Trump hasn't done. That's something that a lot of politicians do, and she's not exempt from it. She has a certain set of answers that she's used to answering, and no matter what the question is, and you have to keep reiterating the question for her to get a clear answer out of it. And I think that's what's annoying a lot of people. So far, people don't seem to get a clear answer from her, and it's always a deflection. But let's continue.
The first bill that we offered Congress before We worked on infrastructure before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the CHIPS and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act. The first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the... Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please?
But
you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate,
and they didn't bring up that bill. I'm in the middle of responding to the point you're raising, and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people. And our focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things, including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do to tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with points of entry between border entry points. That's the work we did, and we worked.
Why is it so much worse now? If they did all of that on day one, why is it such a problem, a disaster now? What happened? What fell through? Because from watching Kamala, she speaks as if she's not in office. She speaks as if she's, as if Republicans are in office and they're just screwing the pooch, and now she's going to do something so different. Like she said, turn the page. But you are in office. You and Biden are in office as we speak. They don't seem to have done anything to fix the problem. And that's, I think, the disconnect. And then for a lot of younger voters, they didn't even know that she was the vice president. So I think there's a disconnect where a lot of people don't really know what's going on, and they're just voting because they see this woman that appears to be black, and they're just going off of that. And a lot of people are misinformed, and they don't want to know anything more. They just want to vote because whatever reason. And I think that's very dangerous. But y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Let's continue.
Supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is a scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic location in our country, killing people. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
Prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
Six Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election, this is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue,
I hear you,
but actually is focused.
People want answers. I think people want answers. And the problem is a lot of people don't think that she's given any answers. She has a plan, but we have yet to know exactly what the plan is and how it's going to fix the economy, how it's going to deal with inflation, how it's going to deal with the rising costs of just everyday necessities, food, clothing, rent. Everybody is feeling the struggle of this administration, but she's speaking as if she's not a part of this current administration, that she has nothing to do with that. And a lot of people like to say, oh, she's a vice president, she has nothing, that's not her job, but she is a part of this administration. If these are things that she wanted to implement, she's right there with the president, and these are things that they could actually work on, could actually propose. As far as the border, these are things that they could fix now and work on now. But once again, she speaks as if she's not a part of this administration, and somehow Donald Trump is in office and making these decisions. A lot of people are very concerned as to what she's actually going to do, because she's flip-flopped on a lot of things, on a lot of issues, and she's not very clear on her plan and what she's going to do either. I mean, if she could say that for Donald Trump all day, but it's still going to point back at you. You don't seem to really know or have a plan of what you're going to do anyway. You just kind of don't really answer questions clearly. and pivot to Donald Trump. Let's continue.
On fixing
Six Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it. These are the 6 Democrats. But more importantly, back to the...
So it wasn't just Republicans who didn't agree with the bill, but she made it seem like Donald Trump was the one who said, kill it, and that was it, and they just had to leave it alone when 6 of her own constituents voted against it as well. See, this is why you have to listen to everything and not just the sound bites that people want you to hear, because there's more to it. You know what I mean? So let's continue.
Original premise. Jocelyn Nungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been. So if it wouldn't have happened, this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those families an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. For a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true. It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months that we would have had more border agents at the border, more support for the folks who are working around the clock trying to hold it all together.
Madam Vice President.
To ensure that no future harm would occur. And this election in 20 days will determine whether we have a president of the United States who actually cares more about fixing a problem, even if it is not to their political advantage in an election, because there was a solution, Brett.
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungari's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss.
This is tragic, and I do feel bad for those people. This is sad. You know, and this is once again taking accountability, well, lack thereof. You know, it's like these things happen on her watch, on Joe Biden's watch. And I get that this is politics and it's shady business, in my opinion, because people want to win and they have their own interests when they're running for these seats and things and running for president and all of this. I couldn't just sit here and say that, oh, all politicians are telling the truth. No, because they all have an agenda, in my opinion. Kamala, the thing that just throws me off with her is you could clearly see the flip-flopping. You know, people talk about the accents. It's like she's playing a role. She's playing to the parts or the people that she needs to play to. She's trying to cater to the people to get their votes, and people, and it's not like this is just audio. We see this in real time. We see her on the campaign stumps. We see how she act, how she try to cater to black people, try to cater to celebrities, to rappers, try to cater to these people. She's faking her way through this situation just to bring people along, trying to relate in situations where she is not relatable. And it's just not coming through for me. I just don't see any good intentions in what she's doing. But let's continue.
But let's talk about what is happening right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about that as well.
But do you want to answer
in
her?
all fairness, I told you, I feel awful for what she and her family have experienced.
During that time, you said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration even before. Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear. I think we all are.
Okay, we've had an immigration issue with the border. And I'll just say this, and maybe some of you guys can answer in the comments. Why is that? Why is it that it seems that this country, and I know everybody wants to come here and go for the American dream, but why is it that in this country, we have this issue with border control? When you think about other countries, they don't seem to have that issue. We can't just flow into other countries as easily as people are able to come into this country. And why is that a problem? And if it was an issue way before Donald Trump, I mean, even when Democrats are in office now, and prior to Donald Trump, if it was an issue, what plans did they have to make it better? And the fact that now we have billions of illegal immigrants or just immigrants in this country taking resources is a whole nother thing. We've seen multiple videos and multiple people talking about this, people on the grounds living here in this country, dealing with all of this stuff that are coming from illegal immigrants pouring into the country that they just seem to just ignore and just allow it to happen. And there's some that even argue you allow this to happen because you want to try to get these people to vote, which something they deny. But what other reason would you allow these people to just pour into this country and also give them aid that citizens of this country are struggling to get right now? You have a homelessness rate that's rising. You got people who are getting evicted, who can't afford groceries, who can't afford their bills. Homeless veterans on the street right now who can't even get help or get as much aid as the people coming in here from other countries are getting. Is that fair? We have these disasters and these storms that are happening, and they don't have any aid for the people, for the citizens of this country. But you're giving migrants money and shelter and free rent and free food and thousands of dollars. That is insane to me. But there are people who are being denied help as we speak through FEMA who actually need the help, who lost everything. And I think it's just crazy that there are other people pouring into this country who are able to get more help than the citizens that are here. That's just mind-boggling to me. It really is. It's just mind-boggling. But let's continue.
That it needs to be fixed. We need more. I was just down at the border talking with border agents, and they will tell you, and I'm sure I know you investigate and you are a serious journalist. They will tell you, we need more judges. We need to process those cases faster. We need the support for those cases that should be prosecuted. They need more resources, and Congress ultimately is the only place that's going to get fixed, Brett. Well, that's how this system works.
That's the premise of this question. There were 90-plus executive orders that were rescinded in the first days. Many of those were Trump border policies. I'm not going to stay here because there's other things to talk about, but you frequently talk to the Border Patrol Union for support of that bipartisan bill, and they did. They supported it. But they also just endorsed Donald Trump and said, you've been, quote, a failure with border security. Why do you think they said that?
I think they're frustrated, and I get it. They want support. They want support, and that's what that border security bill would have done. These guys down at the border, these men and women, they're working hard. They're working around the clock. I get it.
There's a lot of people that look back at what you said in 2019 when you first ran for president. And there have been changes, and you've talked about some of them. When it comes to immigration, you supported allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's license, to qualify for free tuition at universities, to be enrolled in free health care. Do you still support those things?
Listen, that was 5 years ago, and I'm very clear that I will follow the law. I have made that statement over and over again, and as Vice President of the United States, that's exactly what I've done, not to mention before.
Well, see, that's not a clear answer. Answer if that's something you support or not, just saying you'll follow the law. You have to really be clear on, and they like to talk about being clear. She's not clear on her policy. She has a policy, she has plans, but what are they? Clearly state at this point, we're this close to the election. We should be clear on what your policies are going to be and where you stand. So if that's not something that you agree with and that's not something that you're going to support, then you have to be clear on that, because the people who are going to make these decisions have to know if we should vote for you or not. She's not clear. She's not clear on where she stands, and that's shady to me. Let's continue.
If that's the case, you chose a running mate, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who signed those very things into state law. So do you support that?
We are very clear, and I am very clear, as is Tim Walz, that we must support and enforce federal law, and that is exactly what we will do.
So decriminalizing border crossings, like you said in 2019.
I do not believe in decriminalizing border crossings, and I've not done that as vice president. I will not do that as president.
So are you still in support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender?
I will follow the law, and it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these surgeries were available on a medical necessity basis to people in the federal prison system. And I think, frankly, that ad from the Trump campaign is a little bit of like throwing, stones when you're living in a glass house.
The Trump aides say that he never advocated for that prison policy and no gender transition surgeries
you know what, you got to take responsible for what happened in your administration.
Yeah, no surgeries happened in his presidency.
It's in black and white.
Would you still advocate for using taxpayer dollars for gender reassignment surgeries?
I will follow the law, just as...
See, that's what I don't like. She's not answering clearly, and that's very disingenuous. And that's very, and that's what people are paying attention to. She's not answering specifically because we have her on record saying one thing, and now she's trying to convince people that she's about something totally different. Her and Biden are in office as we speak. So you have to be responsible for what happens on your watch. But she's trying to look past that and go back to when Donald Trump, was in office, I guess, but not really focusing on what's happening at the border on your watch, what's happening with these migrants, what happens with inflation, all these things, housing prices, food, all this stuff is on your watch, you and Biden. So you have to take responsibility for what happens on your watch as well. Let's continue.
I think Donald Trump would say he did.
You would have a say as president.
Like I said, I think it's real. He spent $20 million on those ads, trying to create a sense of fear in the voters because he actually has no plan in this election that is about focusing on the needs of the American people. Whereas, at $20 million on that ad, on an issue that, as it relates to the biggest issues that affect the American people, it's really quite remote. And again, his policy was no different. Look at where we are, though.
They say
on plans for the American people, I'm offering a plan to deal with affordable housing. I'm offering a plan to deal with what we need to do to strengthen small businesses, which are the backbone of America's economy. I am offering a plan that is about taking care of young parents and giving them the support they need. My plans for the economy will strengthen the economy, as have been reviewed by 16 Nobel laureates, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, and recently the Wall Street Journal, which have all studied our plans and have indicated my plans for our economy would strengthen our economy, his would make them weaker, would ignite inflation and invite a recession by the middle of next year. Those are the facts.
Why do you think more people say they trust him on the economy than they trust you?
Why? Because when he was in office, things were a lot better. People were actually flourishing. It wasn't like it is now. It's much worse now. Since Biden-Harris administration, things have gotten worse, and that's a fact. Let's continue.
An analysis of our plans for what we would do as president of the United States. It has been clear to those who study and understand how economic policy works that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn the page on the divisiveness and the type of rhetoric that has come out of Donald Trump. People are ready to chart a new way forward, and they want a president who has a plan for the future and a plan that is sound and will strengthen our country. My plan for the economy does exactly that. His plan would be, again, to give tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest corporations in our country and blow up our deficit.
It's interesting you said turn the page, Madam Vice President. You were asked on 2 different shows last week what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be, and what would stay the same?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I know.
And so that would be one change in terms of, but also I think it's important to say with, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. my presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership.
What's the plan, baby? Like, what are you actually going to do that's different from Joe Biden? Because what he's done, okay, if we put it on Biden, he is the president as we speak. It's going to shit right now. What are you going to do that's different from what he's did? She's already said she can't think of anything. If you can't think of nothing, what does your plan entail? Do you even know what your plan is? What specifically are your plans to change things around from what they are now? If I'm going to vote for you, I need to know what your plans are. What are you going to do for all of the stuff that is happening right now? I need to know specifically what your plans are and how you're going to deal with everything that's happening. We clearly don't know what that plan is. And she clearly doesn't know herself. Just saying. I'm just saying. Let's continue.
I'm someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about those plans in recent days. Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years, so what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we have been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald.
She's saying the last decade. That would include Democrats too, right? But this is a game that they play, and I think a lot of people now are familiar with the games, and they're frankly tired of the games. We want people who are going to be honest about what's really happening and really try to do something to make a change. Now, you know, some would argue that both candidates are not, you know, up to par. There are some people who would say that. But this case, to me, she's politics as usual. She's right along with all the other politicians who promise all these great things but never deliver. You don't hear, or they don't see from them or hear from them or do anything. They don't do anything. They just want your votes. So they'll give you everything and a bowl of chips and everything that you want to hear. But then they get in office and they do something totally different. People are tired of this. People are tired of this. And the fact that some are trying to convince us to just vote based off of identity politics or whatever, just because it sounds good. No, people are doing their research and people are paying attention, and they're not just voting in that way. And I think that's something these politicians have to be mindful of, because you're not going to be able to continue to just get people's votes just off of general principles. You're going to have to really give us something tangible that's really going to make a difference in our country, in this economy. Now it's just getting out of hand. So you have to come with something. You can't just sit there and just say, oh, just vote because, you know, she's black, or just vote because she's a woman. No, nobody's impressed with the fact that she would be the first woman president if you don't have any policies that's going to benefit us in this country. It makes more sense for people to focus on what is real and not something you're just a ploy and something you're just using to just get our votes so you can get in there and do what you want to do. Let's continue.
Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other. Rhetoric and an approach to leadership that suggests that the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of what we all know. The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up.
Madam Vice President, more than 70% of people
that is
tell
about
pollsters,
turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
More than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
You
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
Ma'am, no, we know, no. He made a great point, made a great point. And I'm glad he's asking her the hard questions, because this is not what she really wants, but this is what is needed. You've been in office. You said you agreed with Biden's choices and voted on them with him. So how are we supposed to know that you have a different perspective or a different plan that differs from what we've already seen? That's the thing. She's not convincing me or many of the voters that she's going to do anything differently. And everything that she said just shows that she's right there with Biden, and everything that's happening, she co-signs, and she doesn't really have any different thoughts on it, which means we will get more of the same than anything that's different. Let's continue.
What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade, people have become. But listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president. One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
Says the person who didn't have to get a single vote. They just put you there. That's crazy.
So are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you,
that was the question that we asked him.
You didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
And I think that's the thing that a lot of people want to use and to say, oh, he's dangerous, he's this and that. But if I'm not mistaken, I seen a clip where she was saying, kind of talking about, in a sense, kind of bragging a little about being able to have the power with a swipe of a pen or something like that, to where she can just change somebody's life for the worse. You know, having that power, having a position of power. These interviews and debates and all these things for president is going to be a bunch of slinging mud back and forth. You want to make your opponent look as worse as he can or she could possibly look. I understand it. I get it. That is politics. But to me, I think now people are tired of that. People want to focus on what's real. What are you really going to do? And I think this is where she misses the mark. And I think a lot of politicians have missed the mark. when it comes to really saying what you're going to do. If the other person is so bad, then tell us what is it that you're going to do. That's how I feel about it anyway. What are you going to do to make it better? What are you going to do differently from your opponent, as opposed to saying, I'm just going to follow the law? What is that? Everybody don't know what the law is. We want to know, what are you going to propose? What are the things that you're going to try to fight for in this country for people, based on what is happening to a lot of people now? What are you going to do to change to make it better? That's all everybody want to know. And I'm sorry, slinging mud the other way is not going to suffice. I don't think that's not enough, because y'all done this. And you got to understand that Donald Trump has been president. He is a former president. When he was in office, things weren't as bad as it is now. You got to come with more than just slinging the mud the other way. You got to actually give us something that you are going to fight for, that you're going to say now, or propose now, that you're going to actually do once you get in office. Because all of these smoke and mirrors is not going to work. It's not enough for people. It's too much going on. It's too much that's happening, to where people are not trying to play games anymore. People are really serious about this, and she has to be too, and any politician out here has to be as well. That's just my thoughts on that, but let's continue.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes. Let me ask you this, Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump, you call Donald Trump, he's misguided. You say now he's unstable.
He is unstable, Brett.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room. And he has the judgment and the experience.
Girl, answer the question. When did you first know that this man was falling apart? Because we know it's been happening for quite some time. When did you first know? She don't want to answer that question. Many don't want to answer that. Let's continue.
To do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
but
is.
You talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out. Even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous.
There's a lot of people who probably think the same of her, of Kamala. A lot of people probably think that she's unfit and dangerous for the country. So if she's saying it about Donald Trump, there are a lot of people who say the same about her. They're saying that she doesn't really have the qualifications to be president. She's not fit to be president either. Let's continue.
President of the United States again, including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him to choose another running mate. So that is a fact. That is a fact.
Madam Vice President, two more things. You were asked on 60 Minutes about the biggest threat that the world faces, that the U.S. faces. This is what you said.
Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands, okay? This attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles. What we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
A number of experts thought you would say China. The FBI director had said that. But you said Iran. If that's the case, what do you say to critics who look at the actions of your administration and say you're not acting like Iran is the #1 threat?
Well, I will tell you most recently, whether it was in April or in October, and then several hours on each occasion that Iran posed a threat to Israel, I was there. Most recently in the Situation Room, in the most recent attack, working with the heads of our military and doing what America must always do, to defend and to support Israel in its requirement to defend itself, and to give American support to be able to allow Israel to have the resources to defend itself against attack, including from Iran and Iran's terrorist proxies in the region.
Right.
And that
but those
is,
proxies were getting funded by
my
Iran.
commitment to that is unyielding and unwavering.
Critics just say that you either relaxed or failed to enforce sanctions on Iran, allowing all of this money to flow into Iran, like billions.
Let's go back to Donald Trump, who pulled out of a deal that would have actually put Iran in check.
The estimates
and then
in billions.
It was during Donald Trump's
that
administration
go towards
that
the Iran regime.
That we had an American military base that was attacked, where American soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries, and Donald Trump dismissed them as headaches, not to mention how Donald Trump has treated and talked about America's military and military service people, calling them suckers and losers,
Hamas,
has diminished the significance.
We're talking over each other. I apologize.
Well, I would like that we would have a conversation.
She don't want people to hear those facts, see. She want to keep going to Donald Trump to throw you off so you don't focus on all of this stuff. A lot of people aren't privy to this information. So when you're hearing it, it gives you a different perspective. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you don't want to focus on those things that were done on your watch, but you want to keep going to Donald Trump when he wasn't even in office. You see what I mean? She's deflecting. She's deflecting the things that has been done on their watch, trying to just put it all on Donald Trump, which I think, once again, to say, oh, he needs to be responsible for what happened in his administration. Well, same to her and Joe Biden. Let's continue, and then we're gonna wrap this up.
That is grounded in full assessment of the facts, which includes, I think this interview is supposed to be about the choices that your viewers should be presented about this election, and the contrast is important.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the subject of Iran, I am offering what should be an important contrast that is presented for folks to make a decision
and there are critics
that they feel.
Who look at what the administration did and say and think differently. Madam Vice President, they're wrapping me very hard here. I hope you got to say what you wanted to say about Donald Trump. There are a lot of things
There's more to say. I have much more to say,
there are a lot of
actually.
things that people want to learn about you and your policies,
Yes.
and that's why we invited you
I invite everyone
here.
to go to KamalaHarris.com, and you will see that I have 80 pages of policies that are quite comprehensive and should be accessible to anyone who would like to read them. And it includes what I intend to do about affordable housing, what I intend to do about small businesses, what I do.
And that's why we invited you here,
our economy,
to see where you were in 2019 and where you are now.
America's military, and ensure we have the most lethal and best fighting force in the world.
Madam Vice President,
and
they're giving me a hard rap
Well,
here.
I thank you for the time.
I thank you for the time.
Baby, listen, so if she was here to tell us and let us know what her policies are, I think it was a big fail. She focused on Donald Trump, and that's what she always does. She has the same talking points. I mean, nothing different from what she's been saying, sticking to the same points. And when she's questioned about him, she pivots to Donald Trump. And I think people are a little bit more informed and they want to know more. There are some people who are just voting on identity politics or whatever, but a lot of people are more smarter than that. And they're more aware of what's going on, and they want real change. With a lot of people are tired of this BS, politicians, rants and promises that they do. People really want to see a difference. And so that's why I think Kamala is going to have a hard time, and that's why she's having a hard time. The numbers have shifted. It's just what it is. And I think if she wants people to really, really take her seriously, she has to be clear on what it is she has to do. This is not a joking time. Things are happening and things are changing for people, and people need a better situation, something better than what's happening and what they're getting today. And I think this is not the time for those old politics as usual. You definitely have to come with something more now if you want to get the vote of the American people. So that's my thoughts on it. Y'all chime in the comments. Let me know what you think of this this interview. Definitely chime in. I want to hear your thoughts. Comment, like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.